What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Football Over Analysis. Today we're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their fantasy relevant players and whether or not we are targeting or fading them in our drafts this summer. At quarterback, Aaron Rodgers returns for an age 43 season, and there's not a lot left in the tank here. Prime Aaron Rodgers has long since left the building. He hasn't been a QB1 since the 2021 season. Nowadays, he's a low-end QB2. He's occasionally going to have some streaming value. He did put together 3 QB1 finishes last year. And so in the right matchup, you'll be able to play Rodgers as a bye-week fill-in, a desperation streaming option, or he makes for a decent QB3 in 2 quarterback or superflex formats. But Aaron Rodgers as a week-to-week starter at the quarterback position is no longer viable for fantasy football. At running back, Jaylen Warren is coming off of the best season of his career, finishing as the RB17 last year. Warren is somebody that is consistent, although a little underwhelming. I think the fantasy community has tried to will Jaylen Warren into being something a little bigger than maybe he's capable of being over the last few years, and it really just hasn't materialized. Last year, Warren gave people a pretty safe floor, typically scoring between 12 to 14 points on any given week. He's somebody that Aaron Rodgers trusts. He's good in pass protection, and he's also a reliable dump-off option in the receiving game. And that helps Warren keep a pretty reliable floor. However, it's a struggle for him to find a ceiling and go above 20 fantasy points. Warren only did that twice last year. Rico Dowdle is the new addition to this backfield. Dowdle has had success in each of the last 2 seasons with the Cowboys and Panthers when given an opportunity to be the starter. And he's also got familiarity with new head coach Mike McCarthy from their time together in Dallas. It isn't clear right now how the backfield split is going to work, but I think Dowdle probably has the slightly higher ceiling between the two, though Warren will have the safer floor because of his usage in the receiving game. With these split backfields, generally these guys don't wind up being anything more than decent flex plays or bye-week fill-ins, so I don't have a ton of interest in either Warren or Rico Dowdle. However, the cost for either one, they both go in a range where it isn't going to make or break your fantasy team if either one of these guys doesn't hit. And then you have Caleb Johnson, last year's third-round draft pick, who burned a lot of fantasy managers last year. He struggled early in the season, went into the Steelers' doghouse, and never got out of it. Now he's in a situation where they have a new coaching staff in place that doesn't have any ties to him, and Mike McCarthy and the Steelers felt so good about Caleb Johnson that they made it a point to go out and add Dowdle in free agency. So I don't think that bodes well for Johnson's upside for the coming year. However, he's still a name that you should keep an eye on through training camp just to see if there's any kind of positive buzz. He was a third-round pick just a year ago, and the organization probably doesn't want to completely throw in the towel on him just yet. At wide receiver, when it comes to DK Metcalf, I just don't understand what's happened with this guy. Metcalf had that year 2 breakout with the Seattle Seahawks, and he looked like an absolute monster then. But ever since then, it's just been so underwhelming. And it's been a struggle for him to finish as a wide receiver 2, let alone touch wide receiver 1 numbers. He's not a good fit with Aaron Rodgers at this stage of a 43-year-old quarterback's career. Rodgers has trouble throwing the ball down the field. Metcalf struggles with the short area targets. So the two just aren't a good fit together on paper. Metcalf's an easy fade for me. Now, when it comes to Michael Pittman, I'm actually optimistic about him going over to the Steelers. Unlike Metcalf, Pittman is a really good match for Rodgers at this stage of his career. Pittman thrives on volume, on the short area targets. I think he and Rodgers are going to be a really good match together, and I think Pittman is the wide receiver that you want to go after on the Steelers. And best of all, he only comes in ranked around the wide receiver 38 in most drafts, and that's a phenomenal value. You can get him pretty late in the later mid-rounds. Pittman is a guy that absolutely is on my radar for this year. Then you have Jeremy Bernard, the Steelers' second-round pick out of Alabama, and Aaron Rodgers throughout his career generally doesn't like rookie receivers, so Bernard is going to have to make a pretty strong impression on him in training camp for him to have a role right away. So we'll have to see what those camp reports are like and if Bernard's able to separate from the pack of the Steelers' options for wide receiver 3. But there is an opportunity there for Bernard to get on the field in his rookie year. Depending on how those camp reports go, Bernard could potentially be somebody that you're stashing on the back end of your bench in a deeper league. At tight end, there's not much to say here. We're not targeting Pat Freiermuth. There's no ceiling, there's no floor. There's plenty of better late round tight options to consider. That's going to do it for this one, guys. So with the Steelers, this isn't really an exciting fantasy environment for me. You've got a 43-year-old quarterback, a split backfield, a couple of mediocre wide receivers, although I do like Michael Pittman, but there's not a lot of guys here that I'm really going out of my way to target or get a lot of exposure to on my fantasy teams.